On this episode of Physically Spiritual, I talk with Crouse, the founder of Hypurofit, a Catholic personal training apostolate. We discuss his conversion, integrating fitness and spirituality, and his new book, God of Endurance, a practical guide for incorporating exercise and nutrition into your spiritual journey. If you want to support the show, you can become a patron on the Apostolate app by going to physicallyspiritual.com. You can follow me on my Substack at becominggift.com, and you can get a copy of God of Endurance with a link in the description. Crouse, welcome to the show.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So what I like to start out with every guest is just to ask them how the Lord brought them in their life and ministry to what they're doing today. So you're the lead of an apostolate called Hypurofit, a Catholic fitness apostolate, a personal training apostolate. You've just written this book called God of Endurance with Dan Burke, integrating fitness and holiness. How did the Lord bring you to this?
Yeah, so it starts with my conversion story, which I talk about a little bit in the book. And for me, your classic, sacramentalized but not evangelized Catholic. I was really the only reason my family was Catholic was because I'm half Mexican, and so we're just kind of oh, we're Mexicans, we're Catholic kind of thing. My mom, at least, my dad's German, hence my last name is Crouse. And so I went to mass growing up, never really wanted to. I was never an atheist. I was never agnostic. Faith wasn't really a part of our life. I didn't know grace before meals. I didn't know the prayer grace before meals until I was a senior in high school, probably. I never heard it. We didn't pray before we ate, kind of thing. But the Lord planted seeds in high school. My mom made me get confirmed. And I was your classic confirmation kid, being this is stupid. I don't want to do this, in the back kind of thing. But maybe get confirmed. Went through the steps there, and then junior senior year, I actually started making friends that willingly went to youth group and stuff. And so I started going to youth group, and it got to a point where I was actually elected the president of the youth council at my parish, when I was a senior in high school. But my junior year, when I got confirmed and all that stuff, I was already kind of into the partying scene. I was your classic kind of dumb, smart jock guy. I was partying, girls, sports. I thought that's what I needed to do to be cool and to be manly. So at first, when I started going to youth group and experimenting with getting more into my faith, I didn't understand that these two things were contradictory, right? Didn't take me long to figure it out, but at that point, I was kind of stuck in my sin, right? And then I graduated high school, went to college, went to Texas State University my first year, and essentially just fell away from whatever faith I might have had. Got more into partying, girls, sports, drinking, all these things, this really dumb lifestyle. And then when I moved home after my first year, I was just really bored. It's just nothing better to do. And this is before Netflix. And I think I had Facebook on my phone, but back then didn't work well, kind of thing. And so I stumbled upon a book in my room, and that's how I was really bored, because I wasn't exactly an avid reader back then. But I recognized the book wasn't mine. It was a friend of mine's dad's book that he let me borrow, who's now a deacon. And the book was called Rediscover Catholicism by Matthew Kelly. At this point, a classic book, and the people have been in the church for a while. Everybody knows Rediscover Catholicism. And now Matthew Kelly has a bajillion other books and all these things. But that was his first big one in the Catholic world, really. And so I started reading it because, once again, I wasn't an atheist. I wasn't agnostic. I was Catholic. I just didn't know any better. I didn't care. And it got to a point in chapter 6 where it started talking about being the best version of yourself, what that means. And the question was raised, okay, what does that mean? It's okay, think back to my youth group days. It's to be a saint. What does that mean? It's an auto into heaven kind of thing. And then where the Holy Spirit really spoke into me, because this wasn't a question I would have thought of at 19 years old. It had to come from the Holy Spirit. Was, hey, Chase, if you were to die right now, where would you be? Cue tears, cue snot bubbles, cue just because the answer was, I don't know. I didn't know, right? Because I knew Jesus was real. And I knew I was also spitting in his face every day of my life for the past 3 years with everything I was choosing to do. And so, like a good old Texas boy will do, I called up one of my old high school youth group buddies, and we met at Whataburger at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just kind of unloaded all of this on him. And we talked for a couple hours, and eventually, praise God, he was like, hey, you need to call Father Skip tomorrow and see if you can go to confession. And so fortunately, Father Skip's an amazing priest. I called him. He dropped everything he was going to do that day, met me in the church. We had a 2-hour long confession. He gave me the longest penance of my life. But I started going to daily mass. I started reading the Bible. And this is where fitness comes in. And it was a couple weeks later that I was tempted to sin again for the first time, right? I was like, whoa, hey, what's going on? I love Jesus now. I'm not supposed to be tempted. And, and you're at 19-year-old Chase. And praise God, nothing happened. But it was for the first time I realized, like, hey, the battle's not over yet. Like, this isn't just going to magically go away. It's only been 2 weeks of, wow, you're going to daily mass. Great. Doesn't mean you're perfect. And so providentially around the same time, I had some close friends of mine, or old close friends of mine that now are close friends again, that met me at daily mass. They saw me and they're like, what are you doing here? We thought you were a pagan. And like, it's like, I'm trying to love Jesus now. And so in high school, I remember we did those old P90X, videos of the Beachbody DVDs, and they're like, hey, do you still have those like Insanity P90X DVDs? And I'm like, yeah, my dad still has them. I think. He's like, hey, can we go to daily mass and then like come over and like work out with you? Sure, I guess. Like, I don't know, I got nothing better to do. And it was doing that because those Insanity, the workouts are not technically excellent by any stretch of the imagination. They're just designed to make you super sweaty and exhausted. But I remember thinking after one of them, the particularly hard one, like, man, if I can mentally force my body to do this thing it doesn't want to do, maybe that'll help me stop my body from doing the things it's tempted to do when I'm tempted to sin or whatever. And lo and behold, this wasn't an original thought. It's called asceticism. It's called active purgation. A lot of doctors of the church fathers talk about this, but I didn't know. As ignorant 19-year-old Chase, I had no idea. And so for me, that really planted the seed of this connection between conquering my body, choosing to do the good, choosing to do the hard things, and praying for the grace that I might be well formed and stronger and growing in temperance to then say no in those times of temptation or trial. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. But that was the seed form of kind of what I do now.
Yeah. So how did you get from like high schooler going through conversion, reforming your life, starting to pray, go to confession, to starting an apostolate?
I actually didn't. I thought I was going to do ministry for years. So I ended up after that summer, I was 19, had my reversion. A month and a half later, I found myself serving with Net Ministries of Canada. So I lived in Canada for 2 years, as a missionary for 2 years. During that time, I met Dr. Michael Barber, who was at the time working at JP Catholic out in California. He convinced me to go out there after Net. So I did my undergrad in it's called New Evangelization. So theology and philosophy with film and media, basically. So you learn how to communicate through film. And then ended up doing my master's in biblical theology. And during this time, I was the local youth minister at a local parish. During my master's, I was the director of campus ministry for the school for JP Catholic. And then my wife and I ended up getting married. And my wife was in the film industry. She was an actress. And so we knew we were either going to end up in LA or New York. And so I started applying to jobs in LA and New York. And then I ended up getting a job for the Archdiocese of New York City in the young adult office. So we moved from San Diego, California to New York City. And while we were there, we quickly realized that New York was crazy expensive. And we're like, oh man, it's not cheap here. Half my paycheck is gone. Where is it? And so actually, I originally got into personal training really more out of a need of just like needing the side gig. A lot of people listening to this, if you're in ministry, it's like, you don't go into it for the money. And we were also pregnant with our first, and I didn't want to have my wife have to rush back into work if that's not what she wanted to do or couldn't do with the baby. And so my sister was doing personal training at the time. And so she was like, hey, Chase, like, get certified. Like, you can do this early mornings, evenings, you can do it around your other job. Okay, cool. So got certified. I started training at a local 24-hour fitness, big box gym. And I just quickly realized that while I loved working with people in this way, I really hated working in a secular gym for a lot of reasons. Most obvious one, I couldn't talk about Jesus, and that bugged me because when you're working with people one-on-one, you spend like an hour with them. You're walking them through a workout, 30, 45 minutes an hour. And so you just chat about life. You chat about a lot of stuff. And I wasn't allowed to speak the gospel, like speak truth in more obvious ways into these situations with these clients that I was working with. But also it forced me for the first time to ask, like, why do I care so much about this? Why do I like want people to be healthy or eat well or all these things? Because I did. I thought that was a good thing, but I couldn't articulate quite why. And I knew I had this idea of, conquering myself and all these things helping me, but I couldn't quite articulate it. So that's when I went back to JP2's Theology of the Body, which I had studied formally in my undergrad and my master's, but never really with this question in mind. And anybody who's read Theology of the Body knows that he talks about the hermeneutic of gift, or this lens of gift from Gaudium Spes, which says man finds himself through a sincere gift of self. So if we don't know who we're meant to be unless we learn how to give ourselves fully. But in audience 15 of the Theology of the Body, JP2 adds, and this is my light bulb moment, self-donation or self-gift is impossible without self-mastery. And that was, for me, that was it. Like if the purpose of my life is to be like Jesus Christ in all things, that includes his total and perfect gift of himself to the Father on the cross. Well, you can't give what you don't have. And Jesus, being God, has total self-possession, so could give of himself fully. I don't. So I need to cooperate with grace. And so exercise, nutritional discipline. I would never say somebody has to do those two things to be a saint, because most saints never touched a dumbbell, let alone heard of a dumbbell. But every saint did practice self-mastery for self-gift. Every saint did practice heroic temperance and virtue and fortitude, all these things. And so I came to this revelation. I was also really frustrated at the gym. And so I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was like, man, I'm sure there's some like Catholic fitness company that you could work for. This is 2019. So I went on Google, and there was nothing real. Like, there's some Catholics who happen to be personal trainers. There's things like Soulcore or Pietra Fitness, which kind of do the follow along stretching type workout videos, which is great. Just not really my style. I wanted to do, more traditional resistance training and nutrition, right? All within the lens of the theology of the body. And so there was nothing. And so we decided there should be something. And so that's when Hypurofit was born. And so we officially launched in the spring of 2020. And for the first really 4 years, all we did was the one-on-one coaching. Now we have a team of coaches, work with clients all over the world. And this past year, we launched our subscription app, right? So we have an app in the App Store. So people that don't want to pay for one-on-one coaching, but still want to learn more and have access to exercise programs and nutrition, all these things, they can just subscribe. So yeah, come a long way since 2020, but here we are.
That's it. I relate to so much of your story. My life was a little different. I got radically out of shape before I figured out what you figured out. So I don't know if your story included an extra 200 pounds, but mine certainly did. But just similarly, I'd been in seminary for a while, so studying theology, philosophy, doing ministry, and getting out. And I loved and studied the theology of the body, and essentially just realized, like, what's the theology of my body? Like, what do people see when they see me? And the reality is my life was a mess. Was about 400 pounds. I smoked. I was sleeping awful. Just all around things were a mess. But one of my curiosities was I love the theology of the body, but I always felt like people presented it in a kind of like a Gnostic way, kind of like, well, go learn these ideas and it'll fix you. Like, go read the theology of the body, listen to Christopher West, get some good books, and like that will solve your problems. But I don't know about you, but just knowing more ideas has rarely fixed many of my problems.
Yeah, I remember actually, I think I was a junior or senior in my undergrad. And the thing I decided to focus on in my undergrad was spiritual theology. Right? So the study of the spiritual life, moral theology. I loved it. One of my frustrations with spiritual theology was, or with normal theology, dogmatic, whatever the case may be, was it wasn't practical enough for me. So that's why I love spiritual theology, moral theology. But anyway, the thing about studying spiritual and moral theology is you read all these books about what to do, how to overcome the journey in the spiritual life, all these things. But I kept falling into the same old sins, like whatever the case may be. And I remember I was in confession and just talking to a priest friend of mine. Praise God, he's a good man. He's still a friend of mine, but being like, Father, I'm just so frustrated. I keep reading. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know the exact prescriptions that these saints give to overcome this thing, but dag nabbit, and he looks at me, he's like, books don't make you holy, right? And I was just like, my inner Thomist in me just freaked out. Like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, like just reading about something doesn't mean you know how to practice it or live it out. Like, you have to actually live it out. And the Lord is going to give you the grace you need and introduce the trials you need at that specific time. And so just because you read about the illuminative and unitive way, it doesn't mean you're there. And I just remember being like, yeah, I guess that's true.
My real curiosity is like, what would a spirituality of the theology of the body look like? Like, what does this, like, if this is true, like, it has to mean that we should be different now as Catholics than we were before the Pope said this 45 years ago now. So simultaneous with that, I started on a journey to health. I stopped smoking. That was kind of the first step. Started trying to lose weight, and it was kind of like a 5-year process that eventually led to losing about 200 pounds. It was going to my doctor and having a sleep study done, and just going to counseling, just like a million little baby steps of getting healthier. And what I realized partway through that journey was what I was doing was answering that question. Like, this is the spirituality, the theology of the body. Like, it's a holistic life of being healthy and holy. I had this idea that, like, I had this spiritual stuff I did in the chapel and prayer. Then I had this physical stuff I did over here that was like exercise and sleep and diet, not realizing like I'm a whole person, and everything I do with my body and everything I eat and how I sleep and everything else affects my soul. And all of my prayer and how my meditation and my devotions all affected my body too. Right. So it was all one thing. And that realization is what honestly launched this podcast. So like my blog and my Substack are becoming gift, like the exact, insight, that exact quote that you quoted earlier.
Well, I think it's hard for men because we're so good at compartmentalizing our work, different aspects, different parts of us, right? We can almost become different people in different situations potentially. I think women too, but I'm a man, so I know I do it. And so, yeah, but the thing is that JP2 is trying to remind the church is the fact that you are your body. Like, you are not a soul trapped in a body. You're not, and even his fight against Descartes, right? This Cartesian idea of I think, therefore I am. That is not a Catholic worldview. Like, that's just not hard stop. That's not a Catholic worldview. And so this idea of is the thing, this proclamation of you are your body, you're made in the image of God. There's a reverence to your body because you're made in the image of God. And so understanding that then the spiritual life is a fully human life, right? It's the life fully alive. St. Catherine of Siena, the glory of God is man fully alive. And I think it's hard to say you're fully alive when you're trapped in any kind of sin, right? I mean, gluttony being the one that's kind of on our topic here, sloth too, right? But if you're trapped in any kind of really deep sin, you're not living a life fully alive, right? Same with the fitfluencers that have shredded 6-pack abs, but pride, vanity, right? Whatever. Like, there's always, if you're stuck in sin, you're not fully alive, right? And so it's this idea that you are your body, and which requires you to live a well-ordered life, right? Which every doctor of the church will talk about, which means also there's a seasonality to a lot of what we do. Not every day is Lent, but not every day is Easter either, or Christmas, right? But if you eat or live in such a way where every day is a solemnity, then no day is a solemnity, right? And on the other end, if every day is basically Lent, then Lent is pointless. It doesn't mean anything, right? So it's understanding that there's a seasonality to our lives, there's an integration to our lives, and it needs to be well ordered.
Tell me more about Hypurofit, because as Catholics, we have a one-on-one thing, right? We have spiritual direction. Then there's this other secular thing, personal training. So it strikes me that you're not doing spiritual direction, but you're doing something more than personal training. So like what's kind of what's unique about Hypurofit, and what would somebody experience if they were to start working with you?
Yeah, a joke I make all the time with my clients, like, hey, you can tell me your confession, I just can't absolve you. So I'm a big fan of this idea of being authentically Catholic, but being technically excellent. Right? So with all of our clients, and even our subscribers, we're not going to give like a rosary workout or something like that. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're not doing anything and the rosary helps you work out, like, cool, man, like better than nothing, right? Like, go for it. But we want all of our decisions, all of our exercise protocols, nutrition protocols, to be based in the latest science and data that we have at our disposal. Right? We don't want to ignore that. We want to, and part of this is I would think of the Catholic doctors, surgeons, business people that I knew that were just amazing at their craft. They didn't try to Catholicize surgery, right? They didn't try to pray your wound closed or sew a rosary bead up into your organs, right? No, they tried to be the absolute best surgeon they possibly could be while being a very intentional disciple of Jesus Christ, right? And so we want to approach exercise and nutrition in the same way. Now, when we work with people one-on-one, we always tell them like, hey, like I'm primarily and first and foremost your brother or sister in Christ, right? Now that being said, we're not spiritual directors, we're not confessors, and so we're not therapists, right? We're not counselors. So whenever, and it sometimes does, when clients kind of get too close to the boundaries of one of those things, we do try to stay in our lane, right? And we'll sometimes refer out and all these things. But essentially, what happens is when a client first starts working with us, obviously they have a goal, right? Muscle growth, weight loss, just trying to figure out the workout thing, whatever the case may be. And so when you work with a coach, essentially all of our exercise programs, everything's delivered through the app. So when I started Hypurofit, I knew I wanted to help serve priests, religious people in ministry, and just Catholics all over the world. And praise God, now about a third of our clients are actually priests and religious, which is cool. And so we were priced in such a way to where your coach isn't there virtually or physically present while you're working out. So we don't have to charge for the hour, and saving people a lot of money. And so we give a week's worth of exercise content repeated for at least 4 weeks in a row. In the app, there's demo videos. You can log your weights and your reps. You can record yourself, send it to your coach, all these things. And then from a nutrition perspective, we like to say we're habit-based, meaning that we're not just going to give like an arbitrary list of do's and don'ts. But rather, we're going to work on like 1 or 2 things at a time, because ultimately we want our clients to outgrow us. Like, we don't want our clients to feel like we hold some secret knowledge or whatever. We don't. We just happen to be bored enough to study this stuff, right? Like, we're passionate enough about it. And so we want to walk with them, journey with them. And then now the clients, where the interpersonal side of all this comes in, is through check-ins, right? So we'll have check-ins either on Zoom or on the phone, once a month, once every other week, once a week, whatever the case may be. And at the check-in, your coach is going to start every check-in with a prayer. We're going to pray with you. We're going to pray for you every single day. We're going to talk about our goals, results, good, bad, ugly, whatever. Sometimes it does mean like we're going to talk about things apart from exercise and nutrition. Sometimes, like, I have clients that like, man, like, I want to work out and pray in the morning, but man, it's hard getting up early. And then the next question is, what time are you going to bed? 11, 12, 1. All right, cool. We're going to work on bedtime routine. So that way we can pray and work out in the morning. And so I've had clients where, like, in our app, we can assign habits, like daily habits and stuff. The daily habits literally like wake up at 5 and pray. Like, that's the habit we assign. So we want to look at the whole person, right? And so we want to, when clients ask me like, hey, I woke up late, I only have time for prayer or exercise, what do I choose? I'm like, go pray. Like, Jesus comes first. Now, if that exception becomes the rule, that's problematic, right? We don't want the exception to become the rule. We want to have a general rule of life being, I pray every single day. I exercise throughout the week. Not every single day, but throughout the week. But ultimately God comes first, right? So we want to make sure that our clients have a really good approach to exercise and nutrition that doesn't feel overwhelming, doesn't feel daunting, and is sustainable, while at the same time keeping them grounded in our why, which is self-mastery for self-gift, to be like Jesus Christ, right? So we're not doing this to be the next Joe Sixpack, we're not doing this so that way you can be a hot 80-year-old, because there are no hot 80-year-olds out there, right? Like, that's not a thing. We're doing this so you can serve to the best of your ability while you're here.
Yeah, you have to stay grounded in a why that's in accord with the gospel, and the whole kind of fitness, self-help, nutrition, longevity. There's so much of it that's I think a lot of thinly veiled self-fullness, one way or the other. But it's hard to stay focused on the right things.
It's so much about the secular approach to health and exercise and health optimization, for lack of a better word. You get this sense of the reason they're so fixated on it is because they don't believe there's anything on the other side of this life. So if this is all we have, you better hyper focus on it, dude. Like, you better optimize, and you better live as long as you can, as healthy as you can, as well as you can. So for us, we're not doing this to arbitrarily prolong our life, like, because we're scared of death. Like, heaven's waiting for us. The Lord's going to take us when he's going to take us. We're doing this so that way, while we're here, we can serve to the best of our ability. Right. So it's just a different worldview, a different outlook. I'm not scared of death. Like, I pray that when death comes, like, I run through to Jesus's arms. Right. But while I'm here, I need to serve, because that's what I'm called to do. And primarily through my vocation, my wife and my kids, but also in the people I help.
I love this collaboration in the book between you and Dan Burke. It kind of threw some things together. So I went through classes with Dan for spiritual direction with the Avil Institute, and have consulted with him on a couple things with work in my diocesan work. And then I saw the book was co-authored by you, and we ran into each other at a conference. It was good, and we ran into each other again at the gym at the conference, of course. And you guys were moving some weight around. Yeah. So when I saw this collaboration, I love the connection because I mean Dan he's such a gift to the church, especially in mystical and ascetical theology. And I knew you too. So getting it and reading it and learning from it, I especially love the balance and approach. But just tell me how that connection happened between you and Dan.
Yeah, that was straight providence, man. He literally found us because he Googled Catholic personal training, and our SEO is pretty good. Like, wasn't a paid ad or anything like that. It was just Hypurofit. We're the Catholic personal training company. And so he reached out like any client would. And it's actually funny. I still remember because all the new client intakes at that point came through me. Like, we didn't have like a sales team or anything like that. And so I saw his name pop up on the little Google form we had. And I was like, and I knew who Dan Burke. I have Dan's books like on my bookshelf over here. And I was like, there's no way this is like actually Dan Burke. Maybe he has a son named Dan or something. But anyway, we set up an intake call, and sure enough, it was Dan. And so we started working together, and gosh, a couple years ago now. And so he was a client of mine for about a year. And Dan's not shy about this story, so I can tell it. And when he first started working with me, like, he did not like working out. Like, he did not. He just didn't like it. But he did it because one of his advice that he gives his directees is, if you're trying to grow in a virtue or decrease in a vice, and if you tried a solid 3 times or more by yourself, it's time to get outside help, right? And so he had to take his own advice. He had tried getting an exercise routine consistently and stuff a couple of times, and it just never stuck. And so we started working together, and sure enough, one of my first goals with them was like, hey, I just want to prove to you that this doesn't need to be crazy, right? You don't need to be a puddle of sweat on the floor, questioning your life choices for it to be a good workout. You don't need to be, doing burpee backflips or something like that to have a good workout. So we started with just like TRX straps, right? A couple days a week, played pickleball a couple days a week. Like, it was really nothing crazy. But he started seeing gradual improvements. We were starting to build some muscle. His energy got better. Because at the time when we first started working together, he had a lot of health stuff going on. He was on a lot of different medications. But eventually, gradually built more muscle, lost some fat. We tweaked diet, we tweaked workouts, and he caught the bug, and he just kind of started diving in more. And praise God, he's off a lot of the medications. He's feeling great. He looks great, best shape of his life. And he built a gym in his garage. Like, he has all his exercise equipment now. And so, yeah, whenever it's funny. So about a year ago, I wrote the first draft of the book. And I sent it to him just because I knew like he had written books. I'm like, hey, Dan, can you just read this and let me know if it sucks? Like give me your opinion on this. And so he calls me up, and he's like, hey, yeah, Chase, this is good. And, I think we could really do something with this. And he's like, I could do a couple things for you. It's like, one, I can just like introduce you to the guys at Sophia and like maybe write a forward or something like that. He's like, or I could like co-author it with you, and we can just really expound upon some more stuff, build out some of these ideas, and then just really see what we can do. And I was like, dude, yeah, let's do that. And so it just took off from there.
Yeah. The book starts with Dan's story and kind of leads into your story too. And I think that's so important to begin with witness. We're not just like computers that think through ideas, but I think we really grow through experiencing from one another. So I like that advice that Dan gave. If you struggle with something 3 times, you need help from somebody else. I need to probably go through my whole life and think through all my problems and find some help for a lot of them. Oh, and but the book it's both concise and practical. So this podcast is going to come out on August 15, kind of relaunching with the Feast of the Assumption.
Yeah.
And so the book, I think, is launching on the 18th, right?
19th.
19th? Yeah. Okay. So if you're listening to this on release day, jump on and pre-order and get your copies. But the book's really practical, but it's also concise, but I think it's also deep. It offers a lot of richness. So the kind of structure, like I said, is it starts with you guys' stories. It gets into kind of the spiritual side. And I loved what you said in there. If you need to make a new start, like a lot of people would say, like, we'll do like a juice cleanse or a fast or like a fitness challenge. And you said, go to confession. And it's true. I mean, every time I've gone to confession, I feel this like burst afterwards of motivation and strength. That's not just spiritual, but it goes throughout my whole life. Um, so can you just talk some about like that? One, that insight of start with confession before you do a fitness challenge or something. But two, like how do you decide where to spend your time when you get started?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times when Catholics approach health and exercise, they over secularize it. Yeah. So they say, yeah, the church has nothing to offer on this, so I'm just going to listen to whatever fitness guru is popular at the time. And the one thing I don't want to say is that if you need help with exercise and fitness, you're in a state of mortal sin. That's not what I'm saying. um, Hopefully well-formed Catholics know, like, you can go to confession without being in a state of mortal sin. Like, in fact, you should. Like JP2, it said that he went to confession every single day. And like, if Pope St. John Paul II had to go to confession every single day, like, you and I probably could go more, right? And so, but we go to confession, obviously, if we're in a state of mortal sin, we need to repair that relationship with the Lord. But if we're not, we go because we want to bring a particular thing we're working on or struggling with, right? And so, we don't want just a laundry list of like, oh yeah, I cussed and, got a little angry and frustrated, and just the list goes on. It's, a good solid confession, especially if you're not in a state of mortal sin, you don't have to laundry list things. You can just say, hey, Father, I don't have any mortal sin on my conscience, but I am really struggling with this one thing. Right. And that's a good confession. That's a great confession. You're still forgiven for all the other things. Right. And so if you are struggling with temperance, with sloth, with whatever the case may be, bring that to the Lord, right? Like, we need grace. Like, we need grace. And we can't do this on our own. We can't sustain it on our own. And it helps position it into the why behind why we're doing this, right? One thing I really like to tell people is your why should always be a who and not a what. If your why is always a what, it's just never going to be good enough. And then what happens when you hit it? You've hit the number, you hit the pant size or whatever. You still have to keep going, right? But if you have a who in your life, namely the Lord, but also your vocation, whatever the case may be, you're doing these things out of a place of love and of service, right? And so that's kind of to that point. And then to the question of like where to start. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this idea of adding before subtracting. So a lot of times people think, oh, I gotta go on diet. And so they think of all the things they can't eat and they sit in a corner in a fetal position, starving and thinking about food all day kind of thing, right? Not sustainable, really, not a great approach. So in the book and in a lot of my clients, I'm like, hey, when it comes to exercise, like, something's always better than nothing. And so I do make an argument in the book for the need of resistance training and all these things. But I'm like, hey, if your something is like a rosary walk after dinner with the family, that's great. Like, awesome. Go. Right. So it's minimal effective dosing. It's, instead of thinking about going from 1 to 10, and, I'm going to do 75 hard because that's the thing I need to do. Well, what happens on day 76? Right. Think of, instead of going from 1 to 10, go from 1 to 2. And when 2 becomes easy, go from 2 to 3. And when 3 becomes easy, go to 3 to 4. Like, just take one step at a time. So in the case of movement, we need to move at least 3 days a week on average, right? And so that could be walks, that could be hikes, that could be pickleball, that could be resistance training, that could be swimming, whatever, right? Whatever you enjoy or at least hate the least, and you can do sustainably. And then food, and once again, instead of thinking about all these things I can't eat, most people don't eat enough protein, and we need protein obviously for muscle, for hormonal health, for energy, for all these things. Also, protein helps you feel really full, right? Practically speaking. So instead of worrying about all the things not to eat, optimize your protein, move a few days a week, get those foundations in place. Okay, then you can worry about all the stuff and, get more refined and stuff. But a lot of times people try to just take the whole thing at once, and it feels overwhelming and turns into check boxes, and it turns into, I need all these reminders. And it's like, no, just do like 1 or 2 things, do them until they become habitualized, and then add the next thing if you need to, right? Or do whatever you need to do. So, but yeah, it all starts with grace ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. That insight with protein is great. I was actually just listening to a doctor the other day. He was talking about all these rodent studies, and he said that every 1% of protein added to the diet led to a 10% caloric reduction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the thermic effect of food and stuff. Yeah.
And then just the satiety effect and the body not seeking more
Yep.
nutrients. And so I was like, dang, I
Yep.
need to add more protein.
Yeah. So yeah, we need about 0.7 to 1 gram per lean body weight or goal weight, right? For a lot of people. And so 0.7 is great though. A lot of times like you hear like the bro science be like, you need a gram per pound. It's like, don't be wrong. Like you can do that. Like that's fine. It's a lot for a lot of people. But 0.7, a lot of studies show 0.7 is great. So if you're 150 pounds, getting 100 and something, 115, 100, 125 grams of protein a day, awesome. That's great. Or if that's your goal weight, 150 pounds, same thing. Is that going to turn you into a bodybuilder? Well, no, but like, it's great. It's awesome. It's a good start, and you're going to feel full.
Yeah. That phrase you said too, I probably needed to hear that a long time ago. Your why has to be a who and not a what. I think some part of my journey as we got healthier then, it took us, my wife and I, 8 years to have kids. And it was only part of that health journey that we were able to get to that place. And uh, once we started to have kids, though, my physical progress definitely stalled. Just it's like time, food, money, stress, sleep, like everything, of course. And I've been struggling over the last few years with kind of like, I sort of had it figured out before kids, and it's like every time we have a kid, 20 pounds shows back up and then doesn't go away. And my why, honestly, was a lot of what's. I think in my initial journey, I think part of where I'm at now is I think I need to switch my why to be more of the who's, because I think I've had a disintegration of sort of like fitness being about me and God, but shifting focus and bringing my family into the why. Yeah, thanks for that.
The thing is, and what's aren't a bad thing. Like, one of the first conversations we have with any potential new client is like, hey, what are your goals? Like, what are you fighting for? Right. Like, what do you lose 40 pounds? You want to gain 5 pounds of muscle, like whatever. And so it's good to have, like objective metrics to track. It just can't be the end all be all. Right. Because then it's just the only thing you're thinking about. You don't lose weight that week and your life is over. Like I have one client right now, God bless her. She's awesome. And she's a full-time ministry here in Texas, and she's single in her 20s, and but she's never worked out before a day in her life. Like she never did sports growing up. She's really just under muscled, right? And she is about 100 pounds overweight. And with her, she was also anemic, so not helpful with energy levels and everything. And so when you're that under muscled and have that much extra body fat and you're anemic, there's a lot of things going against you. Right. So we'd see like a little bit of weight come off here and then it'd come back, or nothing happened from week to week or whatever. But every week she showed up to our workouts. Every week her protein was dialed in. Every week she was eating really good. Right. And so when somebody is in that situation, for me, one of the giveaways is like, okay, there's something else going on, because she would do a food log. I would see everything, and like in theory, like she should be losing weight. But for a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, the problem is not that they have too much body fat, so they're too little muscle mass, right? So the engine's not big enough. We need to build a bigger engine. The bigger your engine, the more fuel you can burn, right? And so for her, we shifted gears and to be like, hey, let's just go into a season where we're just going to like really focus on weight training. We're going to put on some muscle, right? And in that process, you're going to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. It's called a recomp, but we're going to worry less about what the scale says from week to week, right? Why? Just for overall health, building a bigger engine, but ultimately preparing yourself and continuing to grow in this habit of resistance training and working out, because you've never done it before, right? And so it's mindset is a lot of this stuff. But like I said, not bad to have objective metrics. So for her, having an objective metric helped us figure out that something else was going on. Oh, I'm anemic, right? Well, she got blood work done and all these things. There's some supplements she needed or whatever. So now we're almost to the back up where energy levels, she's about like 85, 90%. Because the thing is that a lot of people don't realize is that when it comes to, your total caloric burn, 60% of that, depending on the person, 60, 70% is going to be from your base metabolic rate. So just like the calories you burn existing. If I laid down on the couch all day, I would still burn my base metabolic rate. But then the other 30-ish percent, 20 to 30%, depending on the person, could be more, but is comes down from the thermic effect of food. So the calories you burn digesting food, protein being high, right? Which is good. Also, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, fancy way of saying all the calories you expend moving without working out. So like me, I'm moving my hands. I'm part Italian, so I got all those hands. But also my phone pacing, if I'm walking to the grocery store, it all takes calories. You're moving, even if you're not working out. And then you have your exercise activity. Right? And so a lot of times when people are anemic or under muscled, a lot of times they don't think about it, but they actually move a lot less subconsciously than somebody who's not. So like when you think of like a fidgety person, like if I say, imagine a fidgety person right now, like in the church pew, whatever, typically you imagine a fidgety person as like a skinny person, like, you know, kind of fidgety, right? Because they're moving a lot subconsciously. That actually burns calories, right? And so when somebody's anemic, when there's other stuff going on, when there's hormones going on, when they're just moving a lot less, they're burning less calories, right? So even though she's only eating 1,500 calories a day, it's actually maintenance for her, which is nuts, right? But it's because she wasn't moving a lot. So anyway, I chased a serious rabbit right there, but hopefully it made sense.
Yeah, it did. It also gives people a look under the hood a little bit at the process, which is helpful. And also, I think people try a lot of things and they don't work and they give up on them. And so much, I think if you just simply stick to something for longer, it'll probably end up working eventually, as long as it's, you're trying something that's solid.
And that's like the job of a coach, right? Is to help you be objective, right? And like I even had a call with a client yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And we just started her cut. And sure enough, she lost like 2.5 pounds, right, this past week. And so I said, all right, you ready for the not fun part, but the part you need to do? And she's like, what? I'm like, don't change anything. Don't change the workouts. Don't make them harder. Don't change the food. Don't up your protein. Don't. And that's the hard part. It's simple, but it's hard. It's copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. If you see results, don't change, right? And now another job of a coach is when results stop happening, when plateaus happen and stuff like that. Okay, cool. Job of a coach to come in and what other levers can we pull? What other variables can we adjust? But as long, I tell clients all the time, it's like, hey, as long as this is working, we don't need to change anything. You don't need a new workout routine. You don't need to change it. If it's working, keep going. And that's the really hard part for a lot of people, right? And analogously with our spiritual life, like it's not like you change your prayer routine every week or whatever, like, and that's St. John of the Cross talks about one of the mistakes of novices is they're always hungry for the next spiritual book, right? And they're reading like 4 or 5 spiritual books at the same time. And it ends up being like a form of spiritual gluttony, he talks about. But eventually as somebody matures in prayer, they realize like a book's great. Like St. Teresa of Avila, she always had a prayer book, right? She'd start with a prayer book, but it wasn't like, this hunger for like reading 4 or 5 different books at the same time and, all these different things and always, being like compulsively obsessive with trying to find the next book, right? So now analogously with exercise, new people are always hungry for the new exercise routine. What's the next thing I can try? What's the next thing I can do to entertain myself and do this thing? When it's like, no, this is working. That's like pro bodybuilders will do the same workout split for like 9 months at a time. They won't change a thing unless like something gets injured or something like that. Now I'm not saying we need to do that. Like it's okay to change it up every now and then, but constantly changing things up is typically one of the things that hurts people.
Yeah, that makes me think of the title of the book, The God of Endurance, because endurance, patience, it's a part of courage. It's a part of the virtue of courage. And when I hear that word endurance, that's what I think of. And oftentimes just sticking to it is the answer. But where did that title come from?
This 15 is like where it comes from in biblically. And I remember it was actually the inspiration for the book, like just over a year ago now. It was in one of the daily readings, right? It was I was doing my morning prayer and I was reading. It was the first reading of daily mass or something like that, and it said St. Paul says, "May the God of endurance, bless you." And I just started stopping, like being like, "That's an interesting title for God." May the God of things you expect to hear: the God of peace, the God of love, the God of hope, the God of joy, the God of all consolations, like all these other things. But in Romans, St. Paul specifically uses hupomeno, right? May the God of endurance or the God of steadfastness, it's another way to translate that. May the God of endurance bless you. And so it was just intriguing to me because I was like, it's just interesting. Like, it's a very unique, it's the only place in the New Testament where he says, may the God of endurance bless you, God of endurance. And so I went back into the New Testament and took a deep dive and at this software called Verbum Bible Software. It's great software, shameless plug. But it helps me to kind of zoom in on all the times hupomeno is used in the New Testament. And what you find is a lot of the times, the thing that's praised the most often by St. Paul, the author of Hebrews, even Jesus in the book of Revelation, isn't necessarily just their faith, their hope, or whatever. It was their ability to endure until the end. Right? So Jesus in the book of Revelation, when he's talking to the churches, he's praising and condemning churches. One of the churches, he's praised for their endurance. They endured the trials, they endured the suffering, right? And same with St. Paul to the various communities and stuff. Like, he praises them for their ability to endure, right? To be steadfast, to hold until the end. And so for me, it's just another, for company's name is Hypuro, which comes from hupomeno and pyro. So the same word, hupomeno, endure, right? Endure the fire. And so for me, it was just kind of light bulb after light bulb, connection after connection. It's like, yeah, this is it. Like, the reason he says God of endurance is because this is the God. Our God is the God that gives us the grace to endure the fire, to endure until the end, to endure the suffering, not because we love suffering. That's why, like, right now there's this growing trend in like stoicism, especially amongst young men. And there's some good elements in there, but stoicism is not Catholicism, right? For Catholics, we don't do discipline and all these things for their own sake, right? They are not the end in and of themselves, like a Stoic thinks, right? Discipline you do for the sake of this. No, we do this to be more like Jesus and to be conformed to his image and likeness, so we can spend eternity with him, to be saints, right? In doing that, we have to have endurance. We have to, and once again, a lot of times people think like running endurance, right? I'm like, yeah, that's an element of it, but it's endurance, it's steadfastness, it's your ability to stand your ground and say, this is the good. I'm choosing the good, and I will choose it again and again, right? When I don't feel like it, when it sucks, when I'm tired, when I'm grumpy, I will endure. I'll show up to my prayer. I'll show up to my workouts. I'll eat what I need to eat. I'll not eat what I need to eat. And so, which takes grace. And so that was kind of the backstory behind, what happened. And then I just kind of ran with it.
I think that's a good note to end on. Chase, thank you so much for coming on the show. So if you want to get the book, there's a link down in the description in the show notes, and I'll throw it up on socials and everywhere else. So please, if you're listening to this when the episode comes out, pre-order the book. If not, you can get it anywhere. But the Sophia Institute Press website or your local Catholic bookstore, probably the best ways to get it, but it'll be available everywhere. You can get a good book these days. If you want to check out Hypurofit, we'll have the link down there in the notes. And the book actually at the end has like a ton of resources, including Dan's ministries, the Avila Institute for formation in spiritual theology and becoming a spiritual director. He's got the Seek Direction app if you want to get matched up with a spiritual director online. He's also has a couple other apostolates, seekdirection.com, of course, his radio show and everything else. So please do check out everything from Chase and from Dan. Get a copy of your book, and God bless everyone. Thanks for joining me on Physically Spiritual. If you want to support the show, you can become a patron on the Apostolate app by going to physicallyspiritual.com. You can follow me on Substack at becominggift.com. I've been your host, Andrew Reinhardt. God bless everyone.